How did you feel about Fritz when he used David's passing as a way to build for Kerry challenging Ric Flair for the world title? Did that bother you that he was trying
Yeah, it bothered me. It bothered me. And it was all, I was out, we went out and filmed. I guess you've seen that.
Yeah.
Around the lake area there. And the way that went.
Yep.
God's on our side and all this. And then using that death to get Kerry to win the championship from Ric Flair. I thought it was just an insult to David. That's the one. I didn't do it. I didn't do that show. I was working with the spring football people, and Mark did that. 40,000 people that were out there. But it was, well.
Yeah. Do you think David would have had a longer NWA title reign than Kerry had?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
David might have been able to later on take over the promotion and run it in a way that was 1970s, 80s instead. And I'm sure that we talked about that, and someday he'd laugh and say, well, someday. And the possibilities of what that show could have been ranks with what WWF or E or whatever it is now. If we'd have gone overseas and gone, my friend, the morning jock at Ron Chapman, got married along in the latter part of that show, the KVIL, and he went on his honeymoon to London, and he when he got back, he said, when I go to a nice hotel, I mean a really good hotel or any hotel, first thing I do is turn on the TV and flop down on the bed. So I turn on the TV, flop down on the bed, and who do I see but you doing world-class wrestling? And I thought, oh, I bet you were really excited. Did you watch the show? No, I didn't watch the show. But yeah, there's another place. I mean, you could have had an international scene of this show, and you might have you could have broken it down into different leagues or programs. The possibility was enormous.
Any insight into why they went with Kerry over Kevin as Flair's challenger?
I guess because of his size, and that it looked more
real.
You used the word real, yeah. It looked more possible.
Yeah.
It looked more possible. Kevin was a great blocking back and doing his own thing when he had an event. But Kerry was this monster, good-looking kid. Everybody loved Kerry. He was just, the big lapdog.
Yep.
And so it seemed to be the thing to do.
There had been constant rumors about World Class selling fake David autographs at the very first Parade of Champions. Any insight into that? Did you ever hear that before?
No, I never heard that before.
Okay.
I never.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about Kerry being a little bit out there, and he had a reputation for being a little slow. Was it hard producing him for TV spots and interviews at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I would go back to the dressing room and I'd say, here's what we're going to talk. Here's what I'm going to ask Kerry. Okay. Now, and you say, and what am I supposed to say? Well, I'd tell him what he has to say. Okay. And so we'd go over it a couple of times. And he'd come out and I'd think, oh, it was always like, well, where is he going to go? And he was such a good guy, you couldn't get mad at him. He just that he would go off on stuff, and it never did him ruin anything. We didn't have to redo it, but it was always a question mark whether we'd get it. About his wedding, he didn't say the vows.
Really?
Because they were afraid he couldn't remember them.
Wow.
I mean, and it sounds like we're insulting him,
right,
and I'm not. It's just a fact, because he was such a great young man to know until the drugs and all that stuff took over. He lost his foot.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
about that. There are many stories passed on about Fritz Von Erich protecting his kids when they got in trouble with the law. Do you think Fritz protected the Von Erich kids to their own detriment?
Yeah, I think so. I never had. I knew a lot of people from Lake Dallas. That's where they were living down
Yeah.
there. And these weren't people that were trying to get to them because they didn't have it. But yeah, there were some things that he did. And like when Kerry came back from Mexico off his honeymoon and got caught with drugs. We thought Kerry was going to prison. And I don't know how that came out. I don't know how it was saved, but he saved it some way. Lord knows how.
Gary Hart, he claimed in his book that he once tried to approach Fritz with his concerns over the fast living of the boys, but Fritz didn't really want to hear it.
Right.
Were you ever aware of that? And do you know of anyone else ever trying to counsel Fritz about it?
Yeah, I knew Gary and I talked about that. And one of the people that worked there and did refereeing and all that stuff and had been around with Fritz for years and years and years, went to him and told him that, I'm not sure which one it was. It might have been Mike after he had the accident, that they were selling drugs to the wrestlers or offering to sell them or give them. Fritz fired him.
Was it pretty much open knowledge that the kids were all using drugs?
Yeah. I mean, everybody was using drugs. Gino would be just so flaked out. He would lie there on the couch in one of the offices and say, "How you doing, partner?" He said, "Oh, he was just in another zone." And he was another good, fun guy, but he got too heavily into that. And, well, you go ahead.
What are your thoughts on Gino's death?
I thought there was more to it than him killing himself.
A lot of people say that.
In fact, Gary seemed to know, and Gary and I would talk about that. Somebody did him.
Yeah, we did an interview with Gary, and he had mentioned that too.
Yeah, somebody killed him.
How do you think Kevin Von Erich was able to survive all this personal turmoil? And what are your thoughts on Kevin's struggles and his strengths through all of this?
It was really amazing because I expected him, I thought he's in the middle of all this. David dies, Kerry's a mess, all this, Mike goes, that probably at some point that he would break. But I think his wife she's a very strong lady. And he came, one thing he did was recognize that this was bad. He and I, we did a feature with him, Mickey and somebody else. We did it for somebody. And we were walking through the Texas Stadium. And he and I talked a lot away from the ring and about stuff all during those years. So he came over to me, we were walking along. He said, "Bill, is it really wrong to hate your father?" And I said, "Well, I guess," I said, "it depends on what has occurred to make somebody have that impression, or make that decision about him." He said, "But you can hate your father and love your father. I mean, there are things that my father never did anything, but I said, you can certainly disagree with him." He said, "Yeah, but," he said, "Dad cheated us, and look what happened with the boys." And he went into this thing, and he said he'd pay so and so, like Ric Flair, so much money, and he'd pay us the regular fee. He said, "Now we were stars." I said, "Yeah, he didn't pay you above. No, he was just paying that regular playment that he always made." So that was very telling, and I think Kevin recognized, to his credit, where this was wrong. So much of it was, so much of it was out of control, and that he had to keep going, whatever was left of that venue.
Do you think it's fair Fritz gets vilified for what happened to his children?
Yeah. Fair that he's vilified?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, part of it, he never let anybody do anything. He always told them what to do, everything. He said, Kevin said, he's run our lives forever. We can't do anything without his okay. He had a chance, and I did too, to go to Lebanon or Israel or someplace. The guy over there wanted us to come over, and he was going to be the star wrestler, and we were going to do a series of shows, tape them, and then run them. This guy was going to run them.
Right.
And the way it was supposed to work, Kevin and I could do the most part, and then they'd fill in the other stuff. And they were going to pay me $10,000. They were going to pay Kevin $50 or something. And so I said, God, this will be great. Just to go over there. Whether I get $10,000 or not. And of course, everybody could use $10,000 like that. So he called me back and said, can't do it. I said, why not? My dad has to have 30% or 50% of whatever I make. So it's going to be 50, whatever, 75,000 or 100,000 then, because Fritz had to have his.
Wow. I
said, how does he do that? He's got it in the contract. He's my agent. He's my everything. And, Fritz didn't have a lot of social sense. He came up to me one day in Fort Worth, and I'm walking, and he says, Bill. And I said, yeah, I got to ask you something. I said, okay. Are you a Christian? I said, what? What, Fritz? What's this? He said, well, I just worry about you. Are you a Christian? I said, it's none of your business. I am what I am, and I appreciate your asking, but just forget it.
Wow. World Class had stronger religious connections than any other promotion, past or present.
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair to use the faith of the Von Erichs and the faith of the fans in order for the promotion to make money? I mean, they use a lot of tactics, such as like playing off of spirituality and morality, and
I don't think religion plays a part in sports.
Yeah.
I don't think it plays a part in that. We were on a religious station, but there shouldn't have been a requirement that we have a religious part in that show. I'm a separation of state and church, so no, I don't think you should have that.
And that would never work in today's wrestling.
No.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.